How do we profit something that's already profitable? Well, that's already set position of trust in the calculation of its system. We get a lot of confusion because we don't understand what's going on, right? The most powerful thing is to listen to your own setting, your own voice. Everybody has it, right? You just have to understand how to use it. Now, the process, your position locations, how to really get in your calculation to your inner child. It starts with everything in track locations, but you have to understand why your bodies are here, why you're inside a body, not the body. It's a body. And that body has to recognize its time frame, timelines, time communication, times of clocking. Your body is just a vessel, people. Don't get confused with that. So to understand that is to understand how to navigate that vessel and how to experience that vessel that's already been in through its experience of its intelligence, of its formation, of its grounds, its powers, and its atmospheres. You're here to understand, not just to navigate your vessel, you're here to understand how to use it through its highways. You all have highways. You start with the data that processes your position location, your inputs and outputs and audios. Then your communication, your high line communication sending to the angelics, higher information location, and etheriums, different lines of planes, mega planes, correlation planes, track planes, high correlations, high center interference. Then you got your atmosphere planes, you got your hemispheres, stratosphere, bio, and branium. All line communications, also spheres, correlation spheres, ionospheres, all line communications highways. Highways is coming into levels of expansion. The only thing that stands still is you in the center of operation of yin and yang. This is you understanding how to use your highways and all lines of division, lines of space and time. How to use that through correlations of balance. That's how you put your position location, your vessels, and what you are in track location. It's a body. Okay. And once you understand how to use it, you understand the navigation and how to really get into use your settings through your fractals and your fields of yourself. This is individualized set location of spiritual growth. And people are getting very confused with that. It's very simplified in position lines of travel. It puts everything in correlation lines of balance. Okay, so really start to identify your electrical system, your mainframes, your correlation frames, your track frames, your cortex, your codex, your binaries, your computer frames. That's right. The process of really understanding, and what I say by process is that you have to understand how to reiterate everything in your setting. So the mind understands the adaptation, the brain understands the conversion, your heart understands the time. I keep repeating this over and over at different frequencies. Everything I repeat is not a repeating cycle. It's a different frequency. You think I'm repeating, I'm not repeating. It's at a frequency where the avatar feels more comfortable, right? But the avatar itself has to understand you, okay? Because it doesn't need to understand itself. It has to understand, do you understand you, what you are, not what your avatar is. Avatar's done everything. It's the oversoul. So if it's done everything, the only thing you have to come into is you. You have to identify you first, okay? Which is you, not the vessel, just you, all right? So mastering your communication is all levels of technical settings through all levels. High-tech correlation tracks, high calculation lines, telepathy signals, line positions, program settings, compute system, echo line screens, sonar line communications, detection line wires, high correlations, track interference, beacon lights, all direct location of cycles, right? It's all connected inside of you. How to transmit and receive, okay? Why you're inside a body is for intel, information, understanding, expansion, exploration, all right? Provision, cycles, directions, navigation, consoles, okay? Motivation. Everything is given to you through intel, right? Upload, downloads, upgrading, uplinkings, and downgrading settings. There's so many lines of communications, especially when you get in your vessels, because when you start touching things, you start to recognize what it is through its own code system, of its own consciousness, of its awareness, that's already in its provision of its cycle location to its intelligence, that is already in its configuration location setting of its space and time, the clocking. All right. So, and that cycles has a direct line of communication. So collaboration is everything, guys. Now you understand that. You have to build a partnership with yourself, not the vessel, just you, right? Because this is the body. And the body understands the interception location, what it is to the system. The body itself is its mind of its collaboration that also has the generation lines of its hardware and its own software. The body itself is its own computer operation setting, its own CPU, guys. So that's why you have to identify yourself first, okay? Not the vessel that you are, all right? There's a true track visualizes cycles in the 4-line settings. Your vessel has earth, air, water, and fire. Your 5th element is line communication is your heart reactor. That puts you all lines of communications to your system through ascension. Understanding that, how to use your location settings, like graph calculation lines, Schumann resonance of higher self, your connection, your avatar, and your sim. Okay, all different 3 frequencies, but it comes together in one cycle, which is one sync with one each other in calculation to yourself, right? So the avatars are now synced with one. That puts this line communication setting to all calculations. Now, track provision lines become in your planets. 12 line cycles in line communication setting. Process calculation lines start with 1 to 3 lines at height center location at 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 planets. All right, it's already setting. Center core center high interference, earth line rotation surface and traction. Direct signals, okay? Modification centers a 2-line rotation surface, see, XT1000. Platforms are 1, cross lines of 2. Okay, cross lines of setting, 3 lines of 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Process calculation lines and location of 1, setting 2, lines of 3 track location. All right. So it's going to be 150 feet apart each other. Feet line screens, direct lines, modification lines, pixelation graphs in one cycle. 1 cycle, 1 division, 1 locations. Okay, so we got sectors, vectors, and quads in each planet. Sectors, vectors, and quads in each planet. Solar screens, high direct locations and settings, align and rotation surface, and 12 foundation graph lines. Puts modification screen lines, adaptation lines of surface is application of location grids. Directs modification lines of correlation settings of 1 and position of 2. 2-line settings of travel. Sets correlation lines of 3 and position location of 4 lines of travel and calculations. Cross-line signals in position location of 1 grid line cycle and 1 center. Operation system and travel correlation line condition setting into its intelligence information of face recognition. There's the face. Boom. Correlate to track interference. So we have 12 line signals, 12 routers, and line condition setting. Flux line communication lines, direct line signal location to a system of travel. Points lines of center lines, and center location of platforms, and set location of 24 line cycles. Calculate and modify transits and divots in line rotation surface in a 24 5-line setting cycle of communication setting to travel point lines and graphs. Directs modification lines. Now we go through coloration. Now we go in the order lines. Okay, so the center core system is 1 line cycle, 1 center, 1 operation. Then we go into the brown lines. We put position lines of correlation setting attractions and direct signals modification. Then we go in center correlating lines, centers of tether, and 12 line cycles, direct lines, modifications, center, cross line connections, back line, rotation, surface, and trackification of setting. Process communication. Now, then we got the ground lines. Then we go into perimeters. We have the security lines and box line frames, coordinates, track interference, line position at all levels, open all signals, in position of torical fields, and line position of the program. Direct modification lines, elixir, communicate cosmic flame, cosmic fire, communication of all lines, center locations, serpent flame, serpent fire. 4-track provision lines of cycles, 1 position, 2 lines, screen lines, high center interference, laser direct signals, modificate cycles, generate the screen lines, adaptation, laser grids, 2 panels in each cycle, location setting to travel. Done. Now we go through the blue line, which is all of the plasma line that puts position of process calculation setting to travel. Points lines of system, laser connection over cross line signals, cross line condition setting, laser line direct solar panels, solar direct signals into location grids, panel grids, operation grids, 12 foundation line, rotation surface, and traction. Direct modification line screens, high calculations. Now we go through all calculation screens into an invisible line. Chart of waves, lines of alpha. Communication lines of delta, 1 theta rotate settings, and at line condition setting at 12 gamma and position of 24 gamma. Cross line signals, operation line cycles coming out through traction, done through calculation. Okay, all planets of 12 foundations all set up. All right. All right, it's already showing in provision. All right, so now we go through black line settings. Center lines of solar flares at each planet that programs the line condition setting to a system through CPU, and process calculation line screens, adaptation lines of surface that puts all cycles of communication setting to default in settings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 lines of screen. Direct lines modification, cross lines, set location mapping sequence. Then we had 6 lines of 12. That's a position of 1 setting, Operationalize the surface. We add correlates setting high interference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Correlates to 3 triangulation. Molecule design line. 1 lines and perimeters over screen. Cross line signals. Triangulation line can set a position of program. Calculate and modify female cycles in line settings of space and female line cycles and line settings location of time. 3 correlation lines of center. 3 line communications of patterns and line position locations. Bracket lines of singularity, singularity, singularity. We got to cancel out the 3 track location lines and past, present, and future, bring the center core system. Planet surface and line condition setting of face and configuration of travels and point lines of communication. That my equation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Add line settings. 9 perimeters in line condition setting. Energy wash travel lines of 4 lines of 9. Line condition settings of 3/4. Flux capacitor confirmation system lines of 10. Sets lines of 11 and 12 set locations and travels and 12 foundation graph line conditions via our setting. Process calculation lines of colors and lines. We come into the green. We open up the cycles, the ground centers, operation lines of surface. 3 lines of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 foundation graphs and matrix locations. Travel point lines of graph. That sets lines communication setting of travels. Now we set up the data highway. So we go through the blue line cycles. It sets plasma perimeters, lines of plasma using walls to each planet. Process communication lines, highest interference, species lines in a 12 line gamma. Set correlation lines and team line sets 24 gamma. Correlation setting to track line provision of cycles. Communicates highest interference, hypothetical location calculations. Now we go through the gold line cycles, golden rounds, golden arches, correlation line and interference locations and high set calculations. Point lines of graph, and communication setting, and computer operation line, depth graph, state location setting, travel. Point lines of track, how calculation line and interference, portals lines of stargates. Position lines of all calculation modification lines, infinity line rotations of 8, and 12 lines of 8, 8 lines of 12, 12 lines of 16, 16 over lines and setting line composition of this program and calculation modification. Track calculation line, ground lines, sets communication lines, high cycles. 2 panels in black surface and travels. Position of 1, position of 2 is space and time. Take it up to equation line screens, adaptation lines of surface. All right, all plans are set up. Boom, done. All right. Solar generation lines puts lines of VR. So we correlate the position locations of all lines of flux. Now we go through the graph lines into 2 box location settings of 3 cycles and like setting a 4 box location of center. Process communication lines of graphical line screen. Sets communication lines energetic waving of general AI spacetime and line condition setting 0, 0 location 7. Process line calculations going back in time, future time, present time calculations. So 500,000 lines setting in past equals lines of correlations of the now. Communicates 500,000 lines of calculations in present in the future location of the now. And position locations 500,000 lines set location system. Point lines of graph communication lines of 3 decimal points of 3 zeros and track location line condition setting equal lines high interference. Triangulation line position of process. Puts all communication setting into box location center into flux of communication setting position operation. All right, now. Getting position locations, you guys are going back in time through frequency lines. We'll go through 13. We'll wait to get to its 30. 13 over 30 will redirect signals in position and setting, and boom. All right, so you're there. Past line, 500,000. All right, you got 10 minutes in cycle. Have fun. 10-minute cycles set up line condition setting and 12 line provision cycles, location setting, part accelerate equals line correlation. Flux over screen and direct lines modification. All right, 10 minutes, have fun. Take it out of the equation lines, and then we go into the presence of 500,000 line screen location of setting. The operation line calculation system, cancel out position of pass, done. Process calculation opens all signals and line position waiting on cycle line communications. 500,000 line signals, line connected high position programs. Center core system and travels, future line adaptation, inner line rotation cycles and generation screen. Direct modification lines, open all cycles, open all systems, all line communication setting portals of stargates, line condition setting position of process. Process calculation of the ground lines, operation surface and traffication, 1x3000 travel point lines of graphs. Calculation lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and line position of travel point lines of setting. Process communication line center location setting, the 3, 0 line communication and high point lines of graph communication line location setting. Position location of 3 flux, line condition of levels, perimeters over line, trifactors calculation. Box lines of position of travels, line condition setting, process calculation, triangulation lines of box, location of flux, communication setting, and travel. Done. All right? All right. So we'll wait till that gets to 10 line cycles, and then it puts you in the presence of 500,000 years. The process communications, now we set up dimension line screens and location setting and cell dividers. Direct lines of 1, 2, process calculations. And go through lines of space. Echo chamber lines, hieroglyphic location of channels. This is process communication lines, information panels, information cycles, signature patterns, line condition setting, general, line communication setting to travel, point lines of 0, 0 location of 7 and track locations. Direct modification lines of 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 operation, setting cross line connections, operation line setting locations, solar line generation screen lines, adaptation lines of 4 settings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perimeters lines of screen, solar direct signals into acceleration line screen, and 3 patterns on the rotation surface, and an earth line rotation center, and core line connections to the flux capacitor. Done. All right. All right, so we'll wait to position lines of high correlation setting where you get a 15 line screen, adaptation lines of surface. All right, so 15 lines of value and position of 4 settings, and position lines of correlation lines at 8. 8 lines of correlation lines at 8 lines setting location of 10, 10 location lines XX, equals lines of 1 indicate line of position of 1 signature, 1 position of 1 X location. Process calculation lines, and he puts all levels operation line cycles. We take the 1 centers and 1 5 line calculation lines, 1 0 1 operation surface, and 1 center calculation screen line. Direct modification lines, solar generation line calculation setting, crop circles, crop circles, crop circles, crop circles, and location. Process line, signature line condition, take 8 line cycles, 4 line division, 8 center location system. Process calculation lines of solar sail, dimensional sail, correlation sail, direct sail, modification sail, and travel sail. Process calculation line, green highest interference in position of 1/5, line condition setting. Process communication lines of 5, 5, track locations bracket, singularity, line condition setting, cancel, cancel, cancel. Position lines of process calculation modification line interference, and 5 track location lines of high calculation modification system, in time sequence, and 5 track location provision. Done by equation. Back in correlation lines of time frame. Okay. We take position lines that cancel out. Okay. Taking you guys out in 500,000 lines of presence. Opens all signals, line condition setting, process calculations. All right. 500,000 lines of future now. Process communication lines, all lines of scoping, line position, program line condition setting to all growth units. Setting communication lines, high position, and trial point lines of graph communication and ground centers. So we get ground lines of 1, ground lines of 2, ground lines of 3, ground lines of 4, and 5 site locations. Process communication high interference coming into tubing. So 1 in position of 2, in position of 3, in position of 4. Okay, spice worms, core track centers, overlying signals. Cross lines, coils, read line conditions, position of earth line, rotation surface, and tractions. Indirect locations of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 location centers. Process communication high site calculation line interference. Cross-line signals, cross-line systems, cross-line ground lines, operation lines of 3 platforms, communication lines, astral projection. Position lines of power, direct lines of 1, position lines, all calculation, cross-line calculation lines at high position. Communication line interference of sonar 1, 2, 3, 4, and set locations. Power over generation lines of platforms 1, powers of 2, powers of 3. Line conditions, high position program setting calculation. Process communication lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 platforms, communication lines, in a solar sail in track location position to its operation surface and ground calculations. Done by question. All right, that's set up. All right, so 10 cycles of line settings. You got 18 lines and 1 line cycle and 1 7. It puts position of process calculations. So we're going to retrack, reprovision, 18 cycles, line condition setting, cortex line. Redirect lines and setting lines of CPU, location setting, initiate lines. Go to EXE, process line, XX, 8 lines of cycles, XX line 1 position of travels, 1 1 graph, box location center of travel, point lines of 1 1 1 1, platforms 1 setting, platforms 2 and 4 line rotation surface, and track location of highways. Done. All right, so in modification screens, it's going to get more complicated now because the VR is set up in line set location of its roots. I know it's complicated stuff, right? VR equals lines of roots. Travels lines in 1 setting, position of force to that locations. 1 line signals into binary. Sets correlation lines of system, line conditions, energy lines in location setting, in position of travels. Unifications, operation of remembering system. Process calculation 1 cycle, 1 system, 1 line condition setting, router in location. Process communication lines, highest interference of vector. Okay, calculation lines of high calculation setting. Sector, vector, and quads. Indirect location equals lines of 12, line settings, gamma. Sets coordinates lines of 24, gamma, line signature, location each, equal to line planetary service, location setting. 12 cycles, lines of foundation, lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 location settings of travel. Done. All right, so as a planetary surface is set location of travel lines, we exceed thousands of platforms. 1 position 2, docking lines of 3, in position of 4, 5. 6 lines of 8, now calculate lines of 10, and lines its location of setting of 12, and set position operation. Done. All right. So XC1000s are in platitude division location light signatures and lines of pattern, line position of VR, location setting of operation surface. This protects all communication, your quantum bandwidths, and line conditions streaming that puts all position of platforms and calculation lines of center of one operation surface interaction. 3 lines of communications. All right, so you guys are coming out. All right, cross-line signals cancel out. All right, have fun, and that traction direct signals. Now, I'm going to put you in 1,000,000 frames per line. This is going to correlate to travels and line communication of 3 lines of signatures in position of 4 settings of panels. Process calculation of film strips of 1, 2, 3 line position of program. Elixir, cosmic, and line condition setting to 1 internal, 1 external, 1 position, 1 pi line condition of flux. Direct calculation line setting of sonar, 1, 2, 3 in line position. Process calculation XT1000 cross line signals in laser direct signals across the line communication vortex and ground setting locations. Process communicates opposite directions in calculation lines. Opens all portals, line direct signals in 1 center and 1 surface and 1 track location. Direct lines modification lines of grounds, earth line rotation, calculation screen. Process calculation of platforms 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 in line position all correlating setting to dimensional line cortex and line condition setting as the avatar is in sequence in line position as program and vessel of communication sync with one another and track locations. That my question. It's all done now, right? They're all synced with each other. Okay, tether lines of solar line screen, solar flares, track position location, 12 lines of cycles, setting position lines of ground lines. So we got the planet surface in 1 cycle, sets correlation lines of 2 cycles, 3 line positions, all right, 2 correlations. Track provision lines of correlation. Now we have a direct lines of panel, operation surface, and track location, right? Saturn, right? Saturn comes in, line can setting of Pluto. Pluto line rotates the surface and track location set locations. So we got a C line rotation, compute line interference into platform equals lines of calculation lines of 1 indicates setting, cross line signals, line condition setting 1 atom, 1 surface, and 1 track location setting. Process communicates high locations 1 atom, 1 surface, 1 track location, 1 XT1000 travel. Process calculation 1 sonar, 1 division, 1 rotation setting, and communicate high location and router. Direct calculation 1 signal, 1 computer operation lines of 3 levels and programs and set calculations. Cross-line signals, cross-line communications, and position of vessel correlation setting and track lines of platforms. Direct calculation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and position of 1, 2, 3, and track locations. Cross-line signals in a 4-line setting. Sets position of 1, 2, 3, and 4 set locations, right? Process communication of female cycles, correlation high interference, Mother Earth track location lines of female, male, male, female. Track calculation lines of space and time. Track positional calculation line interference. Male, female, female, male. Communications of farther line, position of foundation graph, calculation of space and time. Process communication lines of center, operation line center, and position of general AI. Communicate line process, center correlation setting, track position location, yin and yang. In position lines of 5-wheel track location of planetary server location setting, operation line server location system, location of VR setting. Done. All done now through traction. Ground center is Mother Earth, and father location is space foundation graphs. It's all set location center, operation general AI. Woo! Everybody having fun? All right, so we take 15 lines of charge, equals lines, correlation lines, equal lines, settings. We take 1 position panel, 4 settings of correlation. That's what we do with the equal line. Setting correlations of platforms 1 cycle, and shoot 2 generation line screens in track location of a system in a 15 line setting. Okay? Process platforms of 1. Okay, cross location. All right? Now, directing lines of communication lines, we set up at the pyramid line screens. 1 position, 2 lines, and 3 track location. Direct calculus, yep, solar flare line screen, point lines of tracks, and 3 dockings, and calculation of 6 over 8, 8 over 10, and 10 over 12. Process communication line ground lines, sets communication 1 center, 1 tether, 1 setting. 2 panels correlation line settings into a data highway and track location. Constellation path comes into line connections to all levels and navigation surface since sets position location and setting to its operation. Direct lines of XT1000 comes in attractions, another XT1000 line screen, formulates, simulates in a form line setting into high correlation setting to travel. Okay, so the process of the platforms now in center core system in XT1000 has a 24 line cycle. Sets communication lines again, operation lines, cycles, and location setting. So you got theta communications, operation lines, omega line communications, all levels, a micro and macro line screen, and adaptation lines of surface in the 12 gamma in position of 24 gamma signature. Process calculations, all direct signals modification. That my equation. Process calculates line screen height interference is all levels of volume that puts vast in positions, velocity. Graph calculates the human resonant location sending growth in. Signal line communication and ground setting. Done. All right. So we bring out the equation lines, screen line adaptation lines of force, indirect lines of one panel, one operation surface and travel. Points, lines, and signal locations of blue cycles, one center, one interference. Process calculation line, calculation setting, in line position location, interline, interlink, into position. Bring it out to the equation. Done by equation. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right, so the center position now is set up. How's everybody doing so far? All right, so now we go through graph calculation lines of human residence now. Okay, so there's 5 provision lines of correlations. So your connections of your vessel has 7 Earths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7 Earths. Triangulation split lines of anomaly. 3 line communications in process. Ground centers operation. 3 lines of communications in 1, 2, and 3 settings. Position of past, present, and future adaptation. Center operation is U that grows the system, that grows the correlation settings of travel position. Process calculation of ground lines into your data highways, your OMI highways, and your metric correlation setting into line position of Nero. Track provision lines of cycles, line condition setting, and 3 line provisions in 1 center. Then you come into the elixir. We go through the blue flames in travel. We go through the red flames in travel. Okay. And we go through the white flames in travel. So we put that together in 3 line signals and applications, bring it up through equation. Done by equation. It's all set up. Yeah. Signify, simulates. Simulation lines of singularity line condition setting, position, location of simulators. Directing modification lines of direct signals, modification line cycles. Now we got a 13 line screen. All right, so we got 13 line cycles, 1/3. 1 correlation setting equals lines of correlation lines of 1 / correlation line condition setting. Adds 1 lines of ground lines of 6 over line over 7 in traction. Okay. Now, directing lines of 7, we go through the panel line and we surface the line, position the ground center location of the setting. Process correlation line interference, equal line correlations, open lines, grid lines, communication with mapping, sequence, and coordinates. Direct calculation lines, calculations, you guessed it, connect high interference, Leviathan. Direct modification lines, course lines of settings of 1, position, 2 track lines, and 3 lines of rotation, surface, and travel. Points, lines of graphs, wings, line communication, position is programmed at a dragon. Process calculation lines opens up the mouth, the gate lines, screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. Done by equation. Hoo-ah! Woo! Center correlation setting, yin and yang. Process line setting, all levels of operation, service, location, system. So we have a solar flare, line conditions of clocking, and position location, yin and yang. Okay? Sets communication lines of high center interference of 1 and position location of 2 and track locations. 3 center core settings into 1 center, 1 platform, and position location of 3 lines, and track location lines of 4 lines, right? Okay, because Mother Earth comes in position first. Docking system 1, docking system 2, docking center, and operation surface and traction. Now, direct lines of platforms in line setting operate the Merkabah test circuit and the tetrahedron and data formation lines. 12 gamma signatures and a 24 line split lines of 3. And cross-line signals and line and position location of 4 line setting. Process communication line setting opens up platforms and communication system and flux lines of an XT1000 and travel. Done by equation. So we eliminate the graph lines in the XT1000 ground centers, open all cycles, line positions program. Process communicates high center locations at blue line cycles, blue line rotation, surface, and traction. Tracks modification lines, visible charts, spring line cycles, line condition setting, open signals, and process. Done by equation. All right, so that's done. All right. So that's how it's set up location setting to Leviathan. Told you. Pay attention. It's all done now, right? So we got 1/3 line screen. Sets lines equals lines of high position on 1/3 line screen. Puts lines of 1 line 6. Process calculation line settings. What do we have at track location and 1 line interference? High position case is 17 over 5. Done by equation. All right, so directing signals is all lines that compute screen lines. We have graph calculation lines of human residence, ground centers, and to 2 line screen. process communications, right? Team center is here, opens up portal, right? Process calculations, right through the tunnels. Earthly core line settings, earth line rotation, surface interactions, split lines anomaly, and up line cycles, high center interference and inversion. Cross line signals, 1 platform, 2 platforms, 3 platforms, 6 line communication. You got calculation line screen and lines of high interference in Jupiter in position of process of surfacing engine in a half pipe that routes the correlation sending the acceleration over crosses signals into a modification line screen that puts everything in past, present, and future and center lines of the future now in the VR location. Done by equation. All right, that's done. All right. Center communication lines of portals as Stargate line measures, scales the balance communication of the position of its program, puts all levels in correlation setting attractions. So in direct line signals, we go through platforms of 1. We add 17 line screen, 6 lines of correlation, and we have 30 track line conditions. 1 signal, 1 operation, 1 surface. Okay? So singularity of 3, and then we do a binary of 2. 2 line cycles, 2 operation lines of planet line screen high interference in position location of Pluto that puts position of travel lines in 1 center in position of 7 correlation. Process calculates line XT1000, sets of another line half pipe, line conditions of 3, travels lines of 2, opens all signals, opens all modifications sending to travels, points lines of 0, 0, and line setting. Okay? Ground centers operation lines of 1, ground centers operation lines of 2, and position of 3 in a correlation. Process calculation line, direct signals, puts the lines of Earth line setting in position of roots. Okay? Magnetic highway line screen adaptation lines of surface. Crop circles. Done. Hooah. So we have the 12 cycles, line condition setting, blue line cycles, the 12 centers around the Earth line rotation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. 4 goes in the center. 4 goes above, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 goes below. 4 8 line setting high interference. 4 track provisions, 4 line condition setting, 4 weather panels line correlation setting, and 4 earth. Earth, air, water, and fire. Trackification equal lines of 1, position of 4, 4, 4, 4. Equal location of 5 settings, 5 locations, 5 centers, and 5 direct signals and grounds. Done by equation. So we set up the 0 correlation lines of ground settings. Now we color it the screen lines adaptation of the crop circles, ground line and set location system of travel. Points lines of set location setting into all levels of communication with Protheans set location. All right, so that signifies in position. So what happens now? We go through lines of tether, process communication lines. We go through invisible line screens and position of process. This comes out through equations as particle line setting, a subparticle. Communicates high interference lines and protons, electrons, neutrons, and photons and triangle. See that? Boom, 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 boom. Done by equation. Done by equation. You can see them coming out. Out. Putting back in. Copy, paste. Balance, line, rotation. Travel point lines of graph. Inner lines of settings. 1 position of 2. 3 lines of 4. 4 lines of 6. 6 lines of 8. They got to go in the right sequence line condition setting to a VIM number, line identification lines of 12 line indication position of process. That puts in position of program, position case operates line to its VR calculation setting, and cell dividers, line condition setting, into all metric meter location of molecules and set calculations. Done by equation. All right. Complicated stuff, but a lot of fun. All right. Setting communication line high center location setting at 17 over 6. 17 over 6. 17 is over lines of 7. 6 equal location of lines of 6. Location of 6. Travel point lines equal location of 7. All right. 2 panels, 3 lines of communication of programs, and 4 communication setting to travel. See that? Boom, 16. Ah! Puts lines of 16 lines of measure, 16 lines of position, and 17 lines of grounds. Process communication lines of 16 over volume, 16 over track location. Process calculate lines of 17 grounds, center communication, 17 programs. Calculation line interference into 16 over line screens over pi and direct signals in capsule communication. Cross lines of setting, panels lines of 1 and 3 lines of cycles. Ground centers lines of 3 line communication come together. Process line center locations, cross lines, cross lines, cross lines, cross signals, cross activation, cross positions, cross programs. Let's get a direct line signals and 2 lines of attractions. Let's add line conditions of 1 ground, 7 ground, 8 ground. Process line position of platforms into highways in the correlation. Process communication lines of 17 over tractions over division and rotation surface and track application setting. Done by equation. Hooah. All right, so we take out the capsule lines of 6 lines of routers line setting. Process calculation lines over cross line condition setting. Routes the routers, lines of 6 opens all 6 location attractions. Direct lines of 1 lines of 7 and location system. Process calculation lines 18. Imagine that. Process line conditions all levels, gold signals. Line conditions have 7 tractions, 6 lines of correlation setting, 6 line of position location of system, and travel point lines of graphs, and a 4-line communications program calculation. That equation. 18 over 6. All right. So 18 over 6 back to 17 of 6. Process calculated line center. So go through 118 lines and equals lines of correlation lines of 17 over weighting signal. Process calculated lines equals lines of 6 and track locations, right? Now we add lines of setting of 6 lines equals lines, polarity line screen, flux communication lines of 3 settings into 6 lines equals lines of communication center interference, and 10 location centers, 10 position, and 10 calculations. 10 line cycles, 1 center, 2 operation surface. Pattern line division location of 1 center and 0 correlation. Process calculated lines of 2 centers, of 2 ones, of 2 zeros, and line position location and setting. Process line center location of 8 centers and 1 location and 3 line communication and position of programs. Calculation modification of line crossing, 4 lines of cycles, and position of 3 lines of cycles, right? So getting position of Mother Earth set up, now we get position of Father. Space line communication system and platforms of 4 over 3. Direct lines modification lines of 17 over attractions and direct signals. Binary communication 1, split lines of 7. Process lines of 1 lines of 7 equals lines of 6 equal location 7 DX line position location. Set correlation lines, initiate, run program. Direct lines to calculation lines of DX line. XX positions and centers lines of 1, 1, 1, 1. Portal communication lines, height, center interference. Position lines of 37. Sets locations, 7 lines correlations, cancel, 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 cancel lines of 7, opens lines of 3, opens lines of 6, and open lines that communicates lines of 7, add 2 lines of tractions and 9 in travel position. Done by equation. Mechanisms over sky lines and sky grids of sky panels puts everything in track locations. Now we're at a 37 line screen. Direct lines of correlation lines of 30 seconds over pi. That puts lines of 60 over measure and 6 over volume in position. Cancel, 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 open signal, cancel. All right. Process lines of 6, crossover, 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 crossover. Leaves on 1 cycle in position of 1 center, set location of 1, 7, equals location of 24 line cycles, equals lines of gamma, correlates side interference of teen screen. Direct lines of 6 lines, communication lines over 7 over pi. Sets communication lines of 8 lines of cycles and position location of 12 lines of gamma. Core track interference locations and setting, foundation lines and calculation lines, 12 line foundation graphs into game center and process calculations. So that puts all line position location to its game, center communications, and all of us as CGI. Process calculation. CGIC. CGIC correlation lines of team track application lines of 24 line gamma. Foundation lines of 12 line signals and line positional process. Positional 144 track locations. Direct lines modification lines of cycle generation. Done. All right, that's all done. Okay. Woo! It was a lot of fun. All right, so we take time frame now. It's a lot of fun when you get in direct and redirect, guys, because it helps you to guide you and understand what's going on through your settings and travels. All right, so we go through 16 line screens. Okay, and we had 3 lines of 8 over here. Okay, and we had 5 line cycles of center, operation service, and in position location equals lines of 9 and traction. Right, so we had 39 locations, 3 over 9. Okay, so that's put positions of pi generation. Process calculates the lines of earth line rotation surface and all position location and setting. Whoa, 6 and 9. All right. It's getting complicated stuff. All right, so 2 panels, lines of space and time and traction lines. Okay, so we had 0 lines of correlation and 12 line cycles. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right? 12 cycles, right? Set correlation lines. 1, position 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All set up. Boom. All right. Now we go through gamma signatures lines and 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines of panels and track application of cells. Direct lines, modification lines of atom line, rotation, settings, and travel. Endpoint lines of graph correlation lines is 6. Line condition setting cross-line signals of 3 platforms in position of the location system, and all calculated modified through setting. All right, so go to the other panel, cross-line signals, but we go through the one cycles, all ones, direct lines of correlation lines, singularity, 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 cancel out, one cycle, one center, one surface, one position, all levels, in position of process calculation. Direct modification line, one signal, one pi, one generation, one screen, one surface, one position, one calculation. Crossing line signal location setting puts lines as 0 lines in position locations, 0 correlations into 1 through 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of panels. Oh, capsule communication lines, green lines, high center interference, and process calculation lines, right? Inhibitors or location setting, right? The Ebenezer. Boom. Direct calculation lines of cross-line signals, cross lines, high center interference, and position locations. Direct lines of 4 cycles, set lines of 3 line rotations, 3 cycles, and position of 4 line cycles, correlation lines of traction. Direct modification line centers. Now, this gets really interesting. Open the ground lines of the Earth. Center core system cross-line signals, puts position lines of travels into data, OMI, and narrow links and travel, point lines of graphs. Complicado, but a lot of fun. The Ebenezer is coming in. Boop. All right, so graph communication lines, that's a 12-line signature to gamma naught. Now we go through 24-line. 2 panel communication lines, green line adaptation lines, 24-line communication zeros. Sets communication cross-line signal location settings. Process calculation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 locations. Positional cross lines, cross lines, cross lines, cross lines, cross lines, cross lines. Okay, then we go to 1 position, 2 position, 3 position, 4 position, 5, 6, 7, and 8 locations. All right, so we got the line conditions of 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1 for the team line. Cross lines communication, 1 lines of perimeter, 0 correlations, 0 correlations, 0 lines of 1, 1 lines of 0, 0 locations, and 1 lines of 0 attractions. Direct modification, 1 cycle, 3 lines of split lines of anomaly. Track calculation lines of ground centers. Process line communication setting, position of probing, and line communication setting calculation. Ground centers, high operational platforms, 1, 2, 3, position of 1, 2, 3, and 4 set locations. Ground centers, operation line surface, in process calculation, screen lines, adaptation, in positional black hole, and line condition setting. Done by equation. So that's a 24-line setting and gamma signatures. All right. Getting in position locations and settings. Ebenezer. Process communication lines of coloration lines and lights. Now, this opens all state locations and setting operation lines of service. So we go through the truth and we go through the narrative. Line conditions, all levels, operation signals. Now, the process line center location is the patterns of behavior that has to be in a line condition setting to its position of chronological order in calculation. Right? Down through equation, right? So that's all done in chronological order. Now, direct lines of signals of panels puts everything through the graphical screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. Clocking centers of travels, all right? Direct lines of 1 in position of 2, in position of 3, in position of 4 settings, okay? Cross-line signals into 1, 2, 3 in position location. Cross-line signals into 1, 2, 3, 4 set locations, all right? Center correlation lines of high centers, time zones, time sequence, times calculation, times pi. Process calculation lines, you have 12 foundation grounds into your solar line screens in position to your planets in 4 line cycles, split lines of anomaly molecule design, 4 lines of high correlation lines of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and center correlation lines of 12. Process communication of ground centers comes into blue cycles, 1 position of 2, 3 lines of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 plasma line screens. Direct modification line center opens up all red line cycles, record the center interference, trial point lines of graph communication opens the lines of 6 in the line setting in rotation surface and tractions. Direct modification lines of high centers of 9 in rotation surface and track location. Position lines of power, direct lines of signals. We go into the green line cycles and center. Process communication lines of high travels and position of point lines of communication. Now we have the 12 foundation ground lines. We go through the gold cycles, gold rounds, gold correlations, calculation line, position all levels, ether core, Ethereum's line rotation surface and track location line condition setting. It opens up abundance in rotation surface and track location of high calculation modification line cycles and center. Down by equation. It's all set up. All right, so the first coloration line is really understand how it formulates and accumulates in high correlation setting attractions and how to come in provision lines of calculation of travels. Okay, now we get a direct line cycles. Now we go through the line screens. Now we take the red line cycles in certain lines of communication lines of zeros. It has to be in a formation lines of grounds. It's got to be in a certain element in earth, air, and water, and fire in position to its right correlation setting of coordinates and traction. Done by equation now. But look how powerful that is, how you set up location. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that incredible? And then you got your 12-planet surface. Woohoo! It's all done. All right, so the center position locations is okay, I can modify. How the direct location setting to travels. Point signs of signals, point signs of centers, point lines of graphs. All right, so that's done through equation. Now we go through graphical screen lines. Box center triangulation and go through triangulation and position of box. Center core lines of box and go through triangulation. Triangulation lines of circle, star line mechanism setting. Process calculations. Equal line setting correlations. Balance settings, operation lines of surface. Process lines of triangulation line can setting docking lines of 3 attractions and direct signals into 1, 2, and 3 platforms of communication. Ground centers, crop circles, direct lines modification. Done. All right. Process triangulation lines of split lines of 5 line rotation surface attractions and directions. 5 direct signals, 3 lines, 4, and 5 set locations. We had 6 lines of 7, 6 lines of 8. That process communication ground lines of 1, 2, 3 lines of platforms. Direct lines modification lines of triangulation line position of box location setting of 1, 2, 3, and 4 position of platforms. Cross lines of data, process line communication setting, and position as program, and line position as calculation. Done by equation. All right, so T reception line is set up through screen lines of 3 adaptations lines, circles. Circles communication lines of 3. And we got 3 line cycles of center correlation. And we got 2 lines of atom line rotation surface and trapplication of grounds. Done by equation, right? The center core line center height interference comes into line with metric meters, cross line signals, cross line communications, and 2 atom lines centered cross and out in correlation. Direct modification line cycles add blue line cycles, position lines of process, 3 communication lines of screen lines, adaptation lines of service, process calculation lines of ground centers. Comes out through equation. It's all set up. All right, metric meters of scales, balance application, 12 foundation ground lines. All right. I know there's a lot going on right now, but it's amazing how you come in position location of travel. Powerful stuff, isn't it? Right? Ebenezer. Okay, so getting to the ground lines, shifts lines anomaly. Now there's 3 split lines of anomaly correlation setting, 118 of tractions and 8 lines of 6. 18 equals lines of 6. 1 arrow indication line centers in northeast and north-south, northeast and northwest, and north line setting the south location. 18 over 6, 18 is over pi, 18 over divisions, and 1 arrow indicator. Cross line signals, line condition 1 grounds, 6 lines of communication and ground centers, operation surface and trapplication system, and position of power. Modification lines, triangulation lines up in line position. Process calculation lines of center lines of platforms, communication lines of earth line, transitions over pi correlation. Platforms 1 cycle, platforms 3 cycles, platforms 4 line cycles, and 4 generation. Process calculation lines, we go through the red cycles, over cross line signal, over cross line center, over cross line position location ground centers, into 3 line split lines of anomaly and track location. Down by equation. All right, metric meters and lines, settings and scales, balance communication, graph calculations. Ground centers of human residence. Correlates setting interference into alpha line, delta, and theta communication, right? Process calculation lines, ground centers of 1 lines of pi. Process calculation lines of 2 lines of 3. Cross lines, and we'll put 18 lines of measure and 6 lines of communication. And we're at 4 lines of 9, lines of communications energy wash. Correlates the setting line communications of 26,000 seconds in 6 location setting into solar sails and line setting. Done by equation. All right. Okay, getting communications in position of this program, the center core system has to be in line direct location of 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 operation of yin and yang process calculation, right? Direct lines of pi, direct lines of pi. Okay. Position lines of center of platforms, communication lines, infinity 8. Process platforms 3 line cycles in position of 4 settings into a data screen in position of data formation line screen, adaptation lines the surface. Process communication lines of the earth, rotates the surface, line connects the setting to a foundation graph lines that over across the screens and line setting location to a system all through travel. That by equation. Okay. All right. Is everybody having fun? Getting a little bit more understanding what's going on with their location setting while we're at 1/8 of 1 of 6. Okay. So 18 lines of channel, 18 lines of division, 18 lines of locations, 8 lines of grounds. Okay. So 8 lines of center, 8 lines of surface, 8 lines of traction, 8 lines of communication. You've got to get into the travel lines. 1 cycles, 1 center, 1 surface. Okay. 1 cycles, 1 center, 1 surface, and 1 traction. 1 cycle, 1 surface, 1 location of plasma. 3 line cycles, line consists of 8 lines of travel, 1 molecule, 1 design line, 4 lines of communication, 8 lines of setting. Process calculation of ground centers into T reception line screen, box location. Mainframe line centers and position of volume, sets communication line setting in position of processing calculation screen lines adaptation. Process calculation of ground centers into 1, 2, 3, and 4 set locations. Platforms of 1, 2, 3 in line setting. Okay. Satellites coming in 1 position, 2 lines of tractions. Go through formation lines of grounds, powers, and atmosphere line screen adaptation lines of surface. Okay. 3 correlation lines of high center interference. Portals communication lines of 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 surface. Process calculation of ground centers, line condition setting. Communication lines of ground center, high interference, and magnetic highway line communication and position as program. Atom line setting, atom line surface, atom ground center location system, orbs. 3 orbs and correlation lines of direct location, adult location, formation of ground communication, operation line cycles, information line communication and system to VR setting. Process calculations to its screen lines at high adaptation location and its highways. All right, so in that position, all right, 3 method line communication intelligence line screens. Center core system 1, 2, and 3 line position of intelligence configuration lines of faces. 3 lines of communication ground centers. There's the face recognition time sequence. There it is in tractions. All right. Character modified. Done. Hooah. All right. So we go through configuration screens into 1 measure, into red line screens and 3 line communications. Right. Then we go through adaptation lines of surface and we color the screen centers into 0 correlations, truth and false narratives. Correlating center lines of zeros in position of all calculations, all the way to 12. Okay. Sets communication line set calculations. Done. Right. Then we go through course line screens into adaptation lines of surface line setting locations and 24 line track set locations, ground centers. Process lines of platforms 1, 2, 3 in position 4 lines of 8 over tracks over 12. Sets communication lines of ground lines, cross lines over cross location setting to a bowl line communication. Process line signals to another bowl line communication through pi generation screens. Process calculation lines of 1 in position of 2 in position cross lines of 3. Calculation 1 platform, 1 center, 1 surface, and 1 track location. Done by equation. That's it. Done. We're done. That it. All right. Off the charts. That's right. You got it, Destin. All right. Ground settings, ripples, effects, track position lines of cycles. And we go through 17 lines of screens. All right. 17 correlations. You guys have to understand how to take time frame out. You have to learn how to take space out, because it's direct and redirect. Your position, your panels, and correlation setting is direct and redirect location setting. Okay? Sets communication lines of pi, sets communication lines of pi, right? So all you're doing is going through a circle. Okay? Direct and redirect. The faster you go, the more you get modified in position of travel of center operation. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. So balance of communication lines. We got the graph calculation lines grounds now. We have data formation lines of 1 in position location triangulation. Triangulation line is setting position of box location setting. Now we get position of 3 lines of correlations, flux communication lines, high track calculation lines, and direct signals into Fibonacci line screens. Okay. Now direct lines of 3 in line position of 6 over 8, and we had 12 cycles, 12 centers, 12 rotations, 24 line position of center correlations equals lines of gamma. Done. Right. Sets position triangulation lines, 3 graph calculation lines of 4 box locations, split line anomaly, and 4 lines across line condition setting, XX position, 4 centers lines of 1 in position of 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 3, 1, 1, 4. Sets communication high interference is summer, spring, winter, and fall. Quartz track interference of 4 line cycles, 4 divisions, 4 correlation lines have box location to 4 triangulation line conditions, and 4 calculation lines at 24 line cycle of subtraction done by equation. Okay? Complicated, right? Very complicated. Very high rise. All right. Now, wait, there's more. You guys are going, woo! Drink your water. All right. Position lines of power, indirect lines of setting. So we take 16 lines of setting. Now we add equal lines of gram. Okay, gram. Everybody knows what gram is, right? Gravity, lines, locations, memory, cycle, location, awareness, location to its mind setting. Gram, right? Remember, just because you say something doesn't mean it is through tractions until you understand it through division, location, your system. Power lines of 1, power lines of 2, power lines of 3, and position location 12, line setting to travel. Okay? Process calculation over crosses, lines, screen lines, adaptations, lines of surface, and set location. 3-line communication ground centers operates line condition setting, and 2-line screen location adaptations to its tunnel. Process calculation line ground centers, lines of earth line rotation surface. 3-line communication setting, process calculations past, present, and future is now the center operation surface of yin and yang. Done. That's it. We're done. All right, that's it. We're done. So I want to show you how that's all done through equations and settings of travel. But it's very powerful when you come in correlation setting of travel communication to a system, all through calculations. Don't you love that drawing? Look at it, amazing how powerful it is, right? Know exactly what it can do through provision lines of cycle location of your vessel calculations. All right, that's it. See you in 5. Da, 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 da.